welcome to Talk of the Town. I'm in good spirits now, but let me tell you, I didn't go to sleep till after 4 a.m. this morning. I'm exhausted. I am sure everybody else is that watched that selectmen's meeting, but I want you to welcome a dear friend of mine. He works very hard for the town. Please welcome our town manager, Derek Brindisi.
Hi, Karen. Thanks for having me again. Yeah.
What time did you go to bed?
I think I officially fell asleep at 2 a.m. The meeting adjourned around 11:54 p.m. I was a little upset. We might as well have done 7 more minutes, so we would have adjourned.
2 days.
Yeah, we would have adjourned in Wednesday, during Wednesday.
Well, what surprised me, Derek, and you don't have to say anything, that how little one of the selectmen knows in regards to questioning. You could tell she really doesn't know how things work. And I think it's about time she did. And I loved what Malaguti came up and said at the end. He was absolutely right. You wasted all our time for $28,000. You did nothing. And you don't ask the questions ahead of time. These marathon selectmen meetings are ridiculous. And he said more than that. I loved it. Now, I know you tried, Derek, very much. Tell us how you tried with the budget.
Well, so the budget process is really complex. And we've been talking publicly about the budget since early December, when I had my first budget presentation to the select board. But prior to that public discussion, I've been working with our finance director, Lynn Barrett, and all of our department heads to bring to the board a balanced budget recommendation. So the budget process really begins in September, when we start to look at our revenues, start to project what our revenues are going to be. And once we have a sense of our revenues, then we put out a budget message to all the different departments. And I will have to say, we do work extremely close with Dr. Campbell from the school department.
He's a nice man.
He's great. And Adam Blaisdell, his business manager.
Yeah.
The conversations that we have are ongoing 12 months a year. Adam Blaisdell, the business manager, Lynn Barrett, our finance director, I would say they probably talk daily on municipal finances. So, we work really hard. And so then in the month of November, we sit down with all the different departments and we pour through their expenses. And, I don't know how much detail you want to get into it tonight, but when we looked at our revenues in November and then we looked at the expenses, we had about $4 million that on the town side we had to cut out of our budget. And I want to say the school department had about $1.2 million that they had to cut out. So before anybody saw this public budget presentation, in total, between the school and the town, we already had cut $5 million out of the budget. And so that was my budget presentation in December. Last week, the board had concerns that because of the expense on the expense side, we had to use about $1.7 million in excess levy capacity.
Yeah.
So in essence, what that means is that we have to raise an additional $1.7 million in taxes in order to cover all of our expenses.
Yeah.
And so because of that, the board unanimously voted for myself to work with the department heads to come up with an additional 1% cut. And on the town side, what that means is that we would have cut $1 million out of our operating budget, and on the school side, they would have cut $1.5 million out of their operating budget.
Yeah.
And so last night, the board went through each one of the departments. Each one of our departments went up and presented what would have represented their 1% cut. And then the board asked questions regarding if we were to cut that 1% out, what the impact would be to services. And so we spent the better part of 3 to 4 hours going through each one of those individual department 1% cuts so the board could get a better understanding of what that would look like. In total, I think the board cut approximately $170,000 out of all of the town budget. The school did not propose any budget cuts during their budget. So We had $300,000 in excess capacity.
Nothing.
I would say now, because of last night's cuts, we now went up to $470,000 of excess capacity.
Yes, and your budget was hijacked by two selectmen, Selectman Canty and Selectman Iaquinto, because they wanted to go line by line. This is your budget. You came in with the budget cuts. They didn't like that. And it was a unanimous vote for you to do it. I don't get it.
Yeah. So again, they were thinking of ways that they have similar concerns about the excess capacity. And 3 years ago we had about almost $10 million in excess capacity. But again, over the course of the last 3 years, we've had to use percentages of that excess capacity to balance the budget. And I would say this year is probably the worst, that we had to use $1.7 million. And what I try to explain to everybody who's willing to listen, that when we originally looked at our first pass of our revenues, before we were eating into excess capacity, we had about $11.5 million in new revenues. That's the 2.5% tax increase. That's our new growth at $3 million, and what we budgeted about $2.8 million in local receipts. So then we went to the expense side of the ledger, and I don't think people realize that our health insurance went up double digits this year.
Everybody's did.
It is. Right, it did. It went, and this is a problem in the entire state.
My
not just
own
happening.
went up $60.
And I could see that. So when you do the math, it's very simple. You get $11.5 million in revenue, and you have $5.5 million in new health insurance costs. And then I got to pay $2 million in pension. So you only have $4 million remaining when you pay two bills. You write a check to Blue Cross Blue Shield, and then you write a check to our retirement system, and then you have $4 million to pay all your salaries and wages, your fuel costs, your utility costs. So the problem that we're facing a lot of problems, and really what we're facing, to sum it up, is that our revenues are declining and our expenses are increasing. And so that's where the difference amounts to, that we are no longer able to keep pace with our current expenses. And a lot of those current expenses are beyond our control, like health insurance.
Right. And some people don't understand that, because they see condos going up, they see houses being built,
right,
and they're wondering why, this money isn't coming in. But what I say is, you can't do it on the backs of real estate homeowners.
Right, residential.
You need economic development. You got to change the zoning.
Right, you're hitting the nail on the head on that one. Yeah.
You have to. And are you going to try and do that?
Yeah. So a couple of things. Let me pause on the zoning question first. When we look at new growth over the last 5 to 7 years, and I presented this last night, we had phenomenal years of new growth. And just for those people that are listening, new growth represents all new development in town. So right, when the increased development in Pine Hills and Red Brook, the Oasis, these are the big projects that people see. And
Pine Hills is going to...
And they're all going down. So what happens is that, part of our budget is new growth. So we budget about $3 million every year in new growth, but some years we've had $5 million in new growth, and all of that helps our bottom line. But what I don't think people realize is that we enjoyed really strong years of residential development, which increased our revenue bottom line. But what people weren't doing at the same time, the services that we were delivering weren't keeping pace with the growth of the community. So the fire department is a prime example. 10 years ago, they had 7,000 calls for service.
Right.
Now they have 14,000 calls for service. Why do we think we've doubled our numbers of calls for service? It's because of developments such as Oasis, such as Cottage Park, such as Red Brook and Pine Hills. We have these massive developments. And so now the fire chief is saying, I I don't have the staffing available to respond to all these developments. So this is what has happened. This is the Plymouth problem, that they take the money and they use the money for existing costs, but they're not putting that money aside for future costs. It's what happened with the power plant for the last 3 generations.
John Mahoney used to say that.
He's right. You took the money and you spent all the money for existing costs, and you weren't putting it away for future costs. And now we went from a population of 16,000 when the power plant opened to 65,000, and everybody's saying, well, what happened here? How come we can't afford to pay the bills anymore? Well, because the money should have been appropriated in a different way. And that problem continues today. I think, with at least residential development, we need to take a percentage of the residential development and put it towards future service needs, because those developments are placing a demand on our services. If the fire chief or police chief were here right now, they would say the top 2 places that they send their trucks and their cruisers, Cottage and Oasis. Those are 2 projects that just completed over the last 10 years, and that's where all their calls of service are going to. So that's problem number 1, that if we need to focus less on residential development and more, to your earlier point, around commercial development. And that really gets to zoning.
Light industrial.
Light industrial, commercial zoning, where the property value and the building value is worth much more than a residential home. But more importantly, we're not squeezing 300 residential units into a 3-acre lot.
Yeah.
What we're doing is we're working with business developers who want to bring jobs to this community, which is important. But more importantly, these types of commercial developments, they don't have a huge burden on our calls for service with fire and police and EMS. So in that respect, that's where we need to focus our energy. And we don't have a lot of, right now it's currently zoned, with 104 square miles, you would think we have a lot of opportunity parcels for commercial development. We don't. So that gets back to your question. Yes, we need to look at zoning and rezone certain parts of town to allow for by right commercial development.
Right. And that will alleviate the homeowners' taxes. It will. Question I was asked today, can't the town manager tell the school department, we're no longer going to do 50, 70, whatever it is. We're going to do 50-50. And if you don't like it, tough. And I said to the person, that sounds wonderful, but I'm not sure that could ever be done. So you tell me.
So right now it's 60-40 split. 60% of the new revenue goes to the schools. 40% of the new revenue goes to the town. And we just started that I would say this is probably our 3rd year doing that. And what that has done, it's taken away the debate on what services are more important. And so what we do is we say, listen, I don't want to make up a number. We have $10 million in new revenue. Okay, Dr. Campbell, you're going to get $6 million of it, and the town's going to get $4 million of it. And guess what that forces both sides to do? It forces you to live within your means, right? Because prior to that, under the old administration, on the school and the town side, both sides would submit their budgets, and then there'd be negotiations taking place between both sides.
Yeah.
Well, I need this and I need that, and it creates division. It creates animosity. I like what we do now. And I do think over time, as the town services grow, because we provide, although we have a smaller workforce than the school does, our services go beyond just staffing bodies, right? We have to pay for roads. Right now we have $2.6 million as part of our roads budget. So there's a lot of other costs that are associated with the town side that I think over time there may be a leveling off that is maybe more of a 50-50 split. Just this past year alone, based upon the budget and the healthcare costs, it's no longer a 60-40 split. It's more like a 54-46 split. So you're starting to see some leveling off.
It's about time.
I think that'll happen over time, and that'll change, based upon the market dynamics.
Oh, it's such a dilemma, and I don't envy you at all. At all. I mean, David Golden, Selectman Golden, tried last night, so did Quintel. They really tried to pay the budget respect that you presented. And it just didn't happen.
I would say that, so this is my 5th year here in town. Time flies. And
wow.
This is definitely the most challenging budget. And again, it gets going back to, the healthcare costs. And I think people need this, because most folks will say, well, just fix the healthcare, right? Which can be done. It's actually a realistic goal. But the way things are designed here in Plymouth and other municipalities is that you have to negotiate health care with your unions.
Yes.
And so we have an agreement that we signed 3 years ago with the 7 unions here in town. And I would say...
That's when Betty was on the board. It was a great...
I would say that round of negotiations with the unions was historic. And I've said this many times. We saved... I would say probably close to $5 to $7 million with a lot of our healthcare changes going back 3 years ago. And I appreciated the collaboration with the unions. They recognized that they needed to work with the town on that if we were going to save jobs and things of that and save services. We signed an agreement that expires in 2029.
Oh.
So we still had 3 more years left on that agreement.
Yeah.
We realized the savings in the first 3 years.
Yeah.
And so this is year 4 of the agreement, where that's where you start to see this increase coming forward. So, it's my goal and my hope to engage the unions in a collaborative way, that we can reopen this health insurance agreement, and we can find ways, creative ways, that we can try to mitigate the rise in healthcare.
Well, hopefully Betty Cavaco and Dick Quintel will be on that board, and I know you'll be successful.
Well, yeah, it's going to be up to the unions to decide whether or not they think that this is something in their best interest as well. So, if they agree to that, I think we have proven that we can work together. We have different constituents that we serve.
Right.
I serve the residents and the taxpayers. The union heads serve their membership, and I can appreciate that. They have fought hard over the many, many decades to preserve and protect their benefits, and I respect that. But as the finance director would say to me, just because we've had success once, that doesn't mean we stop endeavoring for future success. So I believe that. I think we can find, I hope, some common ground on saving healthcare, because if we don't fix the problem, that's what we haven't talked about tonight. If we don't fix the problem of revenues decreasing and fixed costs increasing, eventually we're going to run out of money in the budget, right? And so, like everybody else has to balance their budget at home, when you don't have money to do certain things, then you don't do them. And what's going to happen here is that we'll have 2 choices. And I'm making up a number, if we had a $5 million deficit that we had to find sources of revenues to cover that, there's 2 ways to do that, right? One is an override, which this town has never experienced an override, and they're one of probably very few communities that have never experienced an override, and that's because we've had a nuclear power plant here in town.
It'll be the end of us.
So if I don't believe an override would pass. Typically in communities that face overrides for their very first time, it gets defeated. So then when the override gets defeated, because the taxpayers are saying, listen, enough is enough, I don't want to pay any more of my taxes, and I can appreciate that, then the only other way to cover that deficit, that $5 million deficit that I keep talking about, is to cut services.
No, wait, I'm going to say something.
Okay.
The Nuclear Mitigation Fund has $10 million in it, and that's to purchase potential future land.
Amongst other purposes.
Yes. All right. Now we have that money in a fund just sitting there. Now, this is what I say. If my house was on fire and the firemen came and I said to them, don't use any water because I want to fill my pool, wouldn't that be ridiculous?
Mm-hmm. It would
Well,
be.
that's what's happening now. And that mitigation fund would solve, you don't have to use all of it.
Right.
Use it. And I know you got 5 selectmen, and I'm going to solicit those selectmen to do just that. You can build that fund up again, but now your house is on fire. Are you going to tell me not to use water on it? Here it is, right here.
Yeah, I think that is definitely a source of funding that could be accessed. I don't think this year we need to access it. We have a balanced budget. We have $470,000 in the excess levy capacity.
Oh, whoopee.
It's not a lot. Don't get me wrong, but next year is, and this is what I'm trying to say to folks. Like, I've heard some people say, "How come this is the first time we're hearing about this?" Because this is the first time we're hearing about this. This is the first time healthcare has hit us in the face. And so what I'm trying to say to folks, I'm giving everybody 18 months notice. And 18 months from now, we're going to have the April 2027 town meeting. And if we can't resolve some of our fixed cost problems, then we need to make difficult decisions on how we're going to continue to maintain services. And you bring up a valid point, Karen, that one of the solutions could be accessing the Nuclear Mitigation Fund. That fund was established, yes, one, to acquire the property over there, but it was also really established because everybody knew that the power plant was closing, and that the result of that, we were going to be losing taxes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got to do what you have to do. Many years, my husband and I had to dip into other funds.
Sure.
To, 4 kids, you just have to do it. And I think you understand that, but I'm going to have to work on that because I don't see the health care being diminished, and I don't see employees being let go.
No. The last thing we want to do is layoffs. And again, we're not there this year. I don't want anyone at home thinking that we're talking about layoffs, because we're not. What we're talking about is that we've identified a problem in our budget that we can resolve this budget cycle. We can absolutely do that. But if the same environment exists in 12 months from now that we have today relative to expenses, we cannot survive another year. We got one shot to fix this. We have, I would say, no more than 8 months from January 26 to September, August of 26 to try to fix some of these problems.
Oh, you just reminded me, we have to delay town meeting until people understand what the state is going to do. How can you build a budget not knowing? And you've done it. But it's scary. I mean, you cross your fingers.
Karen, I have been preaching for 4.5 years now that this town, the way they have done business over the last 10 to 15 years is backwards.
Yeah.
And people
I've
don't like
heard you say it.
People don't like when I talk like this, but I've been doing this for 26 years. And what I often say is that this town suffers from self-inflicted wounds. A lot of the problems that persist are within our control. We can control when we go to town meeting. We can control a lot of the things that we're always debating. We can control zoning. We can control where we want the future commercial development to be. But we oftentimes can't get out of our own way.
Right.
And so, back to your point, we have town meeting the first Saturday of April every year. And I asked the question back in 2022 when I came back. I said, why are we doing this? The governor doesn't even release her budget until January.
Yeah.
It's coming out probably next week, the end of next week. We have already completed our budget preparation, our budget presentation, and our budget deliberation has already been completed.
Yeah.
And the governor hasn't even released her budget yet. So what I have been proposing, and I haven't gained any support until recently, we should be pushing our budget presentation to February, because now we have the governor's budget in our back pocket, and moving town meeting to May.
Yeah.
And I do think, given this recent budget process, that people are starting to realize that we're going into some of these discussions a little bit blindly because we don't know what the state's going to do.
Very blind. But there's a way to do that. I know Canty said, oh, it's in the charter, you can't do that. Well, I'm sorry, this is the way you do it. You call the meeting in April, and then you dissolve it. And then you do it in May. Well, that's how to get around it.
Yeah, you could do that this year, but I would say, well, why don't we go to the October town meeting? Because there's two things that have to be amended. You got to amend the charter, which we've done. We just amended the charter. It was at April town meeting. We just amended the charter.
Yeah.
And it takes time because it's special legislation and it has to go through the legislative body. But then after that, you have to amend the bylaw. The bylaw is very clear on when the town meeting is supposed to be. So I do think next year we could probably push it to the end of April because the charter allows us to do that.
Yeah.
But in order to get it into May, and that's fine. Listen, if I can get it to the end of April, I can. That gives me 4 more weeks.
Yeah.
It gives me 4 more weeks to make some really good decisions, informed decisions.
Yeah.
And then over time, with the amended charter, we can have a real town meeting in mid-May, which for those of the folks that have only been living in Plymouth, but the folks that have moved here from other communities, they would say that most communities have their town meetings in May for that very reason, waiting to get the budget come in from the state.
Does April have 30 or 31 days?
30.
Oh.
Yeah, they have 30 days. So. Okay. But we'd have to see when the last Saturday of April falls. But I do think we could pick up at least 4 more weeks in the budget process. And the other thing, too, we started this year for the very first time is we're not going to have a special town meeting warrant in April. But think about that. This, again, self-inflicted wounds. So the old way of doing business in this town, we'd have a annual town meeting warrant. And so what do? We build an annual town meeting warrant. Yeah. We give that to the select board. They review the articles. They give it to FinCom. They review the articles. Okay, because that wasn't fun the first time. We want to do it a second time. We then build a special town meeting warrant. We give that to the select board, and then they give it to FinCom. And I met with some select board members this past summer, and we said, again, self-inflicted wounds. Why don't we just do this once? Do we enjoy this so much that we got to do it twice in the spring? And so this year, for the first time, we're going to have one warrant. It's going to have all the articles on it. We will save at least 4 to 5 weeks in time by not having to do a special town meeting warrant review.
I'll tell you, I never understood it. And you will save on paper, ink, printing.
Everything.
Everything. Time. Time is money.
This town has done things for so long.
They're stuck.
That, the previous administration oddly never asked the question, why are we doing it like this? Well, maybe they did, and, a lot of the folks who've done it this way said this is how we do it.
I don't think it's intentional. I just think it's the way they do it.
Right.
And it just doesn't dawn on someone. I know when I first came into town meeting, it was 18 20 years ago, I asked, why is there a special town meeting? I don't get it, you know?
Right. Well, and the thing is, if you're somebody like myself who comes from different communities and you see how other communities do it, you realize there's sometimes a better way to do business. And so you bring those experiences with you, and then you can say, listen, have you guys ever thought about doing it like this? And the folks that have never experienced a different community, you just hope that they're like, oh yeah, that's, that makes sense. Why don't we do it like that?
Right.
I've had the opportunity to work for, I mentioned, this already, but I work for the city of Worcester, I work for the town of Upton, now I work in Plymouth. So I've been in the Air National Guard for 23 years now.
Yeah.
So I have all these different experiences that, I come here and I question why we do things a certain way, and some things we do amazing, right? We wouldn't want to change it. But there's always opportunities for process improvement. And,
Sure.
And that's, to your point about just when we have town meeting, is something that I think we got to take a hard look at.
I'm so happy to hear that. It's going to be great. What else is on the warrant? What's coming up?
So this warrant, there's not a lot of new articles.
Nothing big.
Nothing big is really on this warrant. The big one for this year is really just going to be the budget. We have some things that's coming out of planning development, and CPC I think have a few small articles, but nothing that in the past where we would be laser focused or hyper focused on that we, when the marijuana licenses came out, that was a big one, as you know, and acquiring property or doing stuff. Memorial Hall would have been a big one this year if we had the funding, but that's something.
Sick.
Yeah, that's something that would have been that I would have been really gearing up for to try to, convince folks that preserving Memorial Hall is a good thing for town.
CPC is concentrating on getting their budget down, their debt down.
Yeah, and that's what I've noticed. So it's been really small acquisitions. So, but I think moving forward in 2026, beyond the budget, I think affordable housing and economic development are really going to be the two things that are front and center in our conversations. January 20th, so a week from yesterday, we will have a joint meeting with the Select Board and the Economic Development Foundation.
Oh, good.
And the Planning Board. So all three boards will meet together.
I hope that's not another 6-hour meeting.
Well, we're averaging probably 4.5 hours per meeting now. So I make sure I have a full dinner before I go into the meeting.
Yes.
Because it can be long.
David said to me he hasn't been eating till 1 a.m.
Yeah.
Which is very bad.
Yeah, it's terrible for your body.
Right.
You have to go home, eat dinner at midnight, and then go to sleep.
I didn't ask you, but we're both exhausted. Do you want to end the show now, or do you want to go up until 8 o'clock?
I mean, I'm happy to answer any of the questions. I know we spent a lot of the first 30 minutes covering the budget. But whatever, happy to answer any of the questions. I know it's been a long night.
I don't have any more.
Okay, well then we can, if we don't have anybody calling in, then we don't have to keep this going for no reason.
I would rather see you go home and relax.
I appreciate that.
And I'm going home and putting on my jammies. I mean, really, I think I'll be in bed by 8:30. So, but Derek, I admire you and respect you so much. And I want you to succeed, and I want it to be smooth and easy for you, and I'm doing my damn best to make that happen.
Well, it's not easy work, and I know, Karen, you've been in the business for a long time, so you understand how municipal budgets work. You understand what we're trying to accomplish at Town Hall, and I appreciate that. Because a lot of folks, we have different segments of the population. We have folks that are they're so focused on raising their family, taking their kids to soccer practice on Saturday.
I was like that once.
Yeah, and they're not paying attention to what's coming out of Town Hall. Then we have other folks that are heavily engaged and, like Steve Lyden, heavily engaged.
God love him.
He's a big supporter. He recognizes everything we're trying to accomplish. And you have other folks who they're just angry. They're always angry. And so, those are the ones that I struggle with the most because honestly, I don't my only bias is to try to do right by the taxpayer.
You've always said that.
And I know that all town managers eventually, they'll move on to, greener pastures at some point. But while I'm here, I truly do have the best interests of all of our residents. You got to say no. You can't say yes to everything, and people don't like when you say no. And that group gets bigger and bigger every year because you got to say no to a lot of people. But we really do think about, and the department heads are so committed. I mean, each one of our department heads were at the meeting last night until midnight. They all had long days, and I talked to them all this morning. They're all back at work at 8 a.m. this morning. I
interviewed your DPW director, who I love, and he was magnificent here.
Right. He's great.
He is fantastic. I don't know a department head that isn't. You have a great team.
We do. I totally agree.
And so, Derek.
But that's the thing, Karen. Myself, the department heads, the assistant town manager, they're all focused on doing what's right. We're apolitical.
Right. You shouldn't be political.
Right. Our job is to deliver high-quality services at an efficient cost, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what we want people to understand, that we are working every day, working with our elected officials in order to try to advance this community. And that's our number one goal. It's not easy work, though.
Well, I still say to this day, you're the best town manager that's come along. People don't understand what you do, and then you get defeated by 2 selectmen and, possibly a third, but his heart was in the right place. I'm just mind-boggled by it, but we will persevere, and the budget will be concentrated on.
That's right.
And things will change, and we will do the best job we can. I do it from the outside, you do it from the inside.
That's right.
So, and I want to thank you. We're going to go off the air now, Ben, because we're exhausted. Derek, thank you
Karen.
so much.
Good to see you, as always.
I love what you do.